Good evening. Welcome to the December 5th edition of the Downers Grove Village Council meeting. We're glad you've joined us in council chambers. If you're watching at home, we're glad you're with us there too. As is our tradition, we'll begin our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Rosa, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Barnett,
Here.
Commissioner Jose,
Here.
Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit. Here. Commissioner Gilmartin,
Here.
Commissioner Glover,
Here.
Commissioner Tully,
Here.
Commissioner Davenport.
Here. Good to see everybody. Welcome. Is there a motion concerning minutes of previous council meetings?
Mayor, I move that the council adopt the November 21st, 2023 minutes as presented.
Second.
Any comments or questions from the council? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you for that. We are moving along. Item 4 on our agenda tonight, we have a public hearing this evening. This is a budget-related hearing. We'll call this public hearing to order. The public hearing's been called by the Village Council pursuant to the Illinois Truth in Taxation Law to consider the proposed 2023 tax levy of the Village of Downers Grove. Notice of this hearing was published in the Daily Herald on November 22nd, 2023, and a copy of the notice and proof of publication have been presented and are made part of the official record of this hearing. Summarize the procedures we'll follow for tonight's hearing. First, we'll ask the village manager to summarize the proposed 2023 tax levies. We'll then ask any member of the council whether they have a statement or a question. We'll then have an opportunity for members of the public to make statements or comments or to submit written statements or comments for the record. We'll then circle back to the council, see if there's any additional comments or statements, and then we will adjourn the hearing. At this hearing, witnesses will not be sworn, and a verbatim written transcript of the statements or testimony given at the hearing will not be prepared. With that, we'll hand it over to Village Manager Fieldman.
Thank you, Mayor Barnett. This is the budget review and approval schedule. You can see it consists of several meetings. We are in meeting number 5 tonight, talking again about the tax levy. We do have a very brief presentation. If this looks familiar to all of you, it is because I think this is the 3rd or 4th time we've presented this same information, so I'll just go through it quickly here. The slide on the screen shows the total levy for all aspects, which would total $29.9 million. And as you know, we are not levying all of that amount because much of it will be abated. All of the areas, line items shown in the yellow box will be abated, which means not collected because we have other revenue sources that we will use to make those annual debt service payments. When you look at the levy after abatements, the FY24 property tax levy will be $16.89 million, which is the same as it was in FY23 and FY22. So 3 years running with no change in the total levy. And here's a breakdown of the levy by category. You can see the $16.9 million on the bottom line in both of those years. That means the levy has not changed. And because the levy has not changed, a typical residential property in our village that has a market value of about $413,000 will continue to pay $788 to the Village of Downers Grove, which is the same number it would have paid this year. So market value is going up, tax amount paid is the same, therefore the rate is dropping just a little bit. And you're thinking at this point, well, we pay a lot more than $788 in the tax bill. That is true. That is because there are many taxing bodies on the tax bill. The village portion is under 10% of the total tax bill. That's shown graphically here in our dollar bill graphic. We're happy to answer any questions the council may have.
Thank you, Dave. Any questions or comments from the council on the proposed tax levy? Okay, seeing none. Do we have any comments or questions from the public on this? Pretty exciting subject, huh? All right, we'll officially circle back to the council. Any additional comments or questions from the council? I'll just add for the record, one of the reasons if you're watching or tuning in for the first time and you're sitting there wondering why in the world is our property tax levy generating no conversation, a couple reasons. First of all, this is, as Dave mentioned earlier, about the 4th or 5th time we've been down this road. Secondly, our long-range planning process leads us to this, so this is very much not a surprise to anyone. With that said, we continue to welcome all comments or questions, and if you have any, please feel free to email the village or the village council through our website. And this presentation the village manager just went through is available with tonight's meeting agenda. So with that, we will adjourn this hearing and continue on with the rest of our agenda. If you had a printed copy, I don't know if that's accurate, but if you were looking online and you saw our agenda tonight, there was a missing piece. And so at this point in the meeting, we will entertain our public comments portion. This is the portion of the meeting where we entertain public comments on items not on tonight's agenda. So if you're here this evening and you have something you'd like to mention to us, comments you'd like to deliver to the council that are not on an agenda item tonight, please come on down to the podium and let us know what's on your mind.
Good evening. I'm Warner Kienkin. I'm a resident of Downers Grove. And some of you from previous statements that I've made are familiar with my background and my history and my involvement with things. What I'd like to do is back up to a comment that was made by one of the commissioners in the last meeting regarding the anti-Semitism in Downers Grove. And in the nation, there has been a rise in anti-Semitism, anti-Muslim sentiments, anti-immigrant, racism, etc. People also have spoken at our library, and I've been quite involved with the library meetings, about minorities dumbing down the teaching in our city, that the LGBT community is not necessarily welcome in this community. And lately, that to make a statement that our buildings are previously on lands of indigenous people is regarded as being anti-religious. Let's start with the last first. Schools in this country, when indigenous people were placed on reservations, schools in this country attempted to erase their culture by taking away their native names, their languages, their families, and so forth. In taking away, their traditions, they also kind of made them separate from their previous backgrounds. In terms of the slaves that came to this country, they took away their national origin. Many of them were given the names of their owners, which they still have today, and many black people don't even know the heritage of their families. How much, when we talk about anti-Semitism, how much have we taken the time to learn about Jewish or Muslim faiths, which are a part of our society and our culture? What have we learned about their traditions? How much have we learned about what it is like to be gay or the family of a gay child? When I attend some of the meetings at the library, I find it a shame that a person who is a parent of a gay child has to defend that child in public and reveal public information. Further, how much have we really talked to a person who is homeless or mentally ill and understood them to be a person? What we have done is taken away the culture of the person and individuality of the person who does not necessarily look like us. This has resulted in certain faiths and cultures needing security in their places of worship. How much are we doing as a concerted community effort to reach out to people who do not look like us and to better understand them and to try and include them in the activities of our village, of our community? As a result, the holidays are approaching. When we say happy holidays to someone now, this includes all people in the holidays of our culture. Let's be sensitive to people who may not be with that heritage of our culture. Thank you.
Others, subjects not on tonight's agenda.
Hello, Laura Temple, 1115 Prairie. Good evening. First of all, I just want to say thank you to the people who put up the holiday decorations around town. They really look nice, and I enjoy the lights in the darkness, so thank you for that. I'm really hopeful when I think about the opportunities that lie ahead in the Fairview Avenue redevelopment project, once it becomes an actual project and not just a concept. I think about seniors who have retired and maybe sold their homes and are looking for an affordable way to stay in Downers Grove. I think about adults who might need special housing near transportation in order to live the full lives they can and want to. I think about young people who might find Downers Grove to be the perfect place for them if only they could afford it. And I think the same about young families who want to settle in and start their lives here. The potential, the opportunities to create housing that meets the needs of a variety of people first, with serving people as the priority, I am full of hope about that. To move forward, let's get started and get an ad hoc committee that can collect data to help us understand the need, and then using that data, plus best practices, information coming from the county and surrounding communities, as well as input from the village and from residents, and from affected constituencies, we can create recommendations and help light the path forward to making Downers Grove a place that many people of all income levels can afford to live in. Thank you.
Others, subjects not on tonight's agenda.
Janet Winningham, Downers Grove. My comments again are in connection with communication of the council's plan and activities to the village residents, and I'm focusing primarily on the long-range plan. The council's method of outreach seems to be primarily an invitation to come and see what we are doing, rather than communicating substantive information or soliciting and facilitating input on the inclusion of these projects in the long-range plan. I'm wondering, was there a survey of the residents to determine if residents want outdoor dining to be permanent and to permanently remove parking spaces? Do they want hardscape? They want their tax dollars spent this way. I was new to this long-range planning process. It was well underway when I became interested in and know about it, and maybe there was a survey and I missed it, but I don't recall one. The Park District has just initiated a very detailed survey of their long-range planning project. The library has a very detailed survey process that they go through, and I think it's a tool that ought to be used by the council in connection with these kinds of plans and the projects that are going to spend our tax dollars for. You have said that there aren't any discussions now. I've heard you say, this is premature. We don't know what we're doing. It's just a concept, and we're not discussing the plans, and it's not a thing. But it is a thing. It's in your long-range plan. You're budgeting for it. You've talked about these concepts for months, and I'm wondering if you actually know what the residents want in connection with these projects. I have a concern that if the Washington Track crossing is an example of what you plan to do on Main Street and in the downtown, which I think it is, I have strong concerns about what the future of downtown will be like. In my opinion, the Washington Street renovation reflects a strong animosity against automobiles and drivers, that the permanent removal of parking spaces, alleys, and parking lots for outdoor dining cafes reflects that animosity. Most residents do not live within walking distance to the downtown or biking distance to the downtown. We deserve the same access to the library, businesses, restaurants, and other services that residents who live within walking and biking distance will enjoy. Council is charged with representing all of the residents of Downers Grove, not just the 1 mile radius of the downtown. We deserve the same accommodation as those living within the walkable and rideable area. Based on my conversations and interactions with residents and business owners, folks don't know about these projects in the making, and those I hear don't want them. You should do a better job of documenting the demand village-wide by the residents for spending taxpayer dollars for outdoor dining and landscaping before committing taxpayer funds to these projects. Thank you.
Other subjects not on tonight's agenda? Okay. We appreciate the additional input. We will continue then with item 6. Is there a motion concerning the consent agenda?
Mayor, I move that the council adopt the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Item 6 is our active agenda. This is the portion of the meeting where we plan to take action on items previously discussed at least once, sometimes multiple times. Is there a motion concerning the 2024 budget?
Mayor, I move that the council adopt an ordinance adopting the fiscal year 2024 budget in lieu of passage of an appropriation ordinance as presented.
Second.
Are there any audience comments or questions on the 2024 budget motion? Council comments or questions? Greg?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to once again thank staff and all of our council colleagues for all of the work on this budget. I think it's a great document, easy to read, and I'm looking forward to a successful 2024. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Greg. Anyone else? Okay, Rosa, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit?
Aye.
Commissioner Davenport?
Aye.
Commissioner Tully?
Aye.
Commissioner Glover?
Aye.
Commissioner Gilmartin?
Aye.
Mayor Barnett?
Aye. That passes unanimously, 7-0. Item 7 on our agenda is the first reading portion of our meeting. This is the portion of the meeting where we generally are going to discuss things that we don't plan on taking action on. Tonight's first reading agenda might look a little odd for those that watch our meetings normally or look at our agendas normally. This is a continuation of the tax levy discussion. So I don't know that I'm going to ask everybody to get back into it again. But all those items that are on our first reading tonight are tax levy related items. They're each of the individual parts of the tax levy. So if there are any additional comments or questions from the audience on the tax levy, we'd welcome those now. Okay, any council comments or questions? Okay, there's a little bit of pro forma to all this. So we appreciate your patience with the process, and for those that have been attending our meetings, we're glad you've participated along the way. Item 8, our attorney's report. Enza.
There's one.
Oh, did I miss one? I'm sorry. I missed, geez, that's terrible. I did miss one. We have a way more exciting and interesting thing than the tax levy for the 17th time. Stan.
There's no pressure on me to perform
Yeah.
better than Fieldman's PowerPoint at home, so we'll try. Thank you, Mayor.
Good evening, Stan.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, council members. The exciting item on tonight's agenda is the historic landmark designation petition at 5408 Carpenter Street. This property is just a little bit southwest of the downtown on the west side of Carpenter Street. The property was constructed around 1940s. The house possesses many of the features of a Cape Cod style home. It's a 1.5-story structure with a gabled roof, has minimal overhangs. You can see a small front stoop on it, and typically there's windows with shutters like we see here today. So this is a really good example of a Cape Cod home here in the village of Downers Grove. The HPDRB considered the petition at the November meeting and recommended approval of the home for landmarking status based on the criteria that it's over 50 years old and that it's it has the distinguishing features of a Cape Cod home. If approved, this would be house number 31 on the village's historic landmark list. That's all my presentation tonight, Mayor. Happy to answer any questions for you tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Stan. Does anybody from the audience want to weigh in on this one? Some thumbs up from the audience, that's good. Didn't get that on the tax levy. Come on down.
I'm Mary Ann Badke, and I live at 5408 Carpenter Street. I'm actually a little taken aback by the to-do of this. So it's kind of I don't know, a little daunting. It was like when the big sign showed up in my yard, plus my yard is a little raised. I was like, whoa. But anyways, I'm happy to do this because I love our street between 55th and Maple. There's no two houses alike. People have stayed on the street for years and years. They redo parts of the house, some more than others. So I really appreciate, the older homes and the distinctness of them. And people are always telling me my house is charming. So I, just wanted to say thank you for considering it, and I hope you'll approve.
Thank you, Marianne.
Yeah. Good evening, Irene Hoekstrom at 1232 Gilbert Avenue, and I just wanted to also state my support for landmarking this Cape Cod house. It'll be the first example of a Cape Cod that we're landmarking, so I hope you'll all agree and support it as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Any others? All right, council comments or questions? Martin? Go ahead.
After Chris. Oh, okay. Go ahead. Yes, sir.
Lead us off.
Yes, sir. Well, first of all, thank you very much to the petitioner for going through this process. It is a process, but it's a good process that results in an even better outcome. So thank you very much for taking the time and putting up with the hullabaloo that is necessary to make this fantastic development occur. I'm always pleased to see historic landmark opportunities come before the Village Council. I recall back in 2008 when the very first home was landmarked in Downers Grove, because before that we didn't even have the capability of landmarking homes voluntarily in our community. And since then, 30 different properties have received landmark designation and protection, more importantly, in the Village of Downers Grove. I hope to congratulate you very shortly on being 31 as we move into the next group of homes and properties that have been landmarked. It's one of those things that I think really allows us to put some meat to the saying that Downers Grove preserves the balance between tradition and progress. So thank you very much for bringing this forward. It's an honor to be able to vote on it.
Thank you, Martin.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I just want to say, first of all, you have a beautiful home. As someone who was brought home from the hospital to a Cape Cod and bought my first house was a Cape Cod, I'm excited about seeing this first one, and I support this 100%. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Others? Mike?
I'll just join in the chorus here in thanking you for landmarking your home. I have a few bona fides in this, as Commissioner Tully, in that I sat on the commission for 16 years and was chair of the group that landmarked the first home, and what a great program. I mean, this is a totally voluntary program, and talks so much about wanting to preserve the character and of our communities. And this is one good way to get that done, and a good way to preserve somewhat affordable home too, going into the future. This home will not be torn down and replaced with some huge thing that doesn't fit in the neighborhood. And it's a beautiful example of the Cape Cod, inside and out, well preserved. And so thank you again for saving this for future generations.
Thanks, Mike. Leslie?
Just want to echo that, I was canvassing earlier this year for, this last re-election campaign, and I distinctly remember this home and just finding it incredibly charming and lovely when I was canvassing. It really actually sticks out in my mind. When I saw the sign that it was up for historic preservation, I was really happy to see that, and I echo Commissioner Davenport's comments that it's wonderful to see some of these smaller homes being landmarked so that we can preserve some of that tradition and some of those more affordable options near our downtown. So thank you for going through this process.
I had a couple of things. Hullabaloo, great choice of words. But nonetheless, thank you. It should be a hullabaloo. We have a rich tradition in Downers Grove of a couple of things, not the least of which is a very wide and diverse set of housing stock. We have houses that are brand spanking new, and we have houses that are that's the 1850s, and every style that's come along in the development of residential construction in between there. So it's great when people are interested in taking their property and trying to sort of make a little piece of it ours by preserving it. So hullabaloo is a great word, and it's appropriate. Thank you. Anybody that's watching this from home, let me just add too, if you go to our website and just go to the Google search bar in the top and put in Landmark, you'll get a very detailed, very easy to read, straightforward sort of layout of the process by which this can be done to your home too, potentially. So if you have an older home and you have an interest in this, spend a little time on our website on that page. There are people here from Stan's office and elsewhere that will help you through that if you have questions along the way. But it probably starts with you taking a few minutes and looking at our website, so please consider that. Anything else from the council? Okay, with that then, we'll move on to whatever report Enzo wants to give us.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This is my favorite meeting of the year. I have 17 items to present. I'm happy to read each and every one of them. They are all related to the tax levy and the abatement ordinance, or otherwise my friend Mike here has posted them all on the screen for us, so your choice.
I think they're probably just fine on the screen.
Wow, and they're all easy.
They will all be on next week's active agenda.
Thank you, Enzo. All right, the mayor's report. I have a brief report this evening. It is purely sort of clerical in nature. One of the jobs the mayor has in Downers Grove is he's the liquor commissioner, and with that comes certain responsibilities as it relates to state law. So we do have a process by which a liquor license can avoid the normal process of going through our liquor commission, and so I'm going to start that process for one of our applicants tonight. The Village Council, or the Village, has received an application for an on-premise beer and wine-only liquor license from Cooper's Hawk Downers Grove Lobby Bar, LLC, doing business as Community Coffee and Wine Bar, located at 3500 Lacey Road, first floor lobby. Pursuant to Section 3-12 of the Liquor Control Ordinance, public hearing for the liquor license application may be waived. That's what we're doing tonight. The application must be placed on file for a minimum of 2 weeks, subject to public comment prior to the issuance of a new license. So at this time, I'm placing this application on file in the village clerk's office. Barring any objection, once the 2-week waiting period has passed, a liquor license shall be issued to Cooper's Hawk Downers Grove Lobby Bar, LLC, doing business as Community Coffee and Wine Bar, located at 3500 Lacey Road, the first floor lobby. This is placed on file Tuesday, December 5th, 2023. And so with that, we will continue with our agenda tonight and go on to our council member reports. This is an opportunity for council members to report out on goings-on in the community that they're associated with or other groups that they've been working with, events they want to highlight. So we'll go ahead and start with Commissioner Davenport.
Thank you, Mayor. Congratulations to our Downers Grove North football team and their second place finish at the state, and pretty exciting. Also had a great time at the 5K Grove Express on Thanksgiving morning, and I believe I'm the fastest commissioner. That's all, Mayor. Thank you.
Seems like we ought to quantify that a little bit. Danny, what's on your mind?
I agree, he's the fastest commissioner. I just wanted to report on a couple events that their Downtown Downers Grove Management Corporation is hosting over the next few weeks for the holidays. They're going to be doing visits with Santa on Saturdays and Sundays from 1 to 4 until December 17th. You can vote for your favorite holiday window decorating through December 10th. Admire gingerbread houses on display until December 10th. Merry Madness on December 14th from 5 to 8. And then they also have set up a number of oversized holiday decorations to capture moments in and share your pictures on social media. They'll also be offering, again, candy cane cash rewards all season. And you can embark on a gingerbread man hunt for all ages, in which prizes will be given to both kids and adults. So those things will be happening over the next few weeks. Hope you guys can make it out.
Thanks, Danny. Leslie?
Yeah, I don't need to look up my 5K time to know that Commissioner Davenport is faster than I. But I can say that I had a slower kid for the first part, but I selfishly ditched her towards the end with my husband. On a different note, I just want to thank everybody for their support of the Grow Foundation throughout the year. It was one of our best years, and just on Monday, we were able to give $15,600 in grants to local community organizations who are doing really good work here, specifically in Downers Grove. So again, thank you, and we hope to have another great year next year, so be on the lookout for Passport to Dining next year. Thank you.
Thank you. Martin?
Thank you, Mayor. I think Commissioner Davenport was home already and halfway through his breakfast by the time I crossed the finish line at the Grove Express. So that's almost a rhetorical statement that you made, Commissioner. I just want to take a moment to recognize Becky Nelson, the Vice President of Chamber 630, our Chamber of Commerce that we share with Woodridge. For anyone who knows Becky Nelson, Becky has been a driving force of the Chamber and really somebody who lights up every room wherever she's at, a born business developer and networker. She is moving on to other things, but I just want to wish Becky the best of everything and thank her steadfastly for all her contributions to local businesses in Downers Grove and beyond. We appreciate all your service and your support, and you'll be missed. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Martin. Chris?
I have no report, although Commissioner Davenport, I would just like it noted that I was not in town, unfortunately, for the 5K, so I would agree that you were probably the fastest commissioner here in town. Thank you, Mayor.
It sounds like a challenge.
Accepted.
Greg?
I only ran to the kitchen for more pumpkin pie. So he must be the fastest. Thank you.
The only thing I want to add is I wasn't able to be here this year for the race and for the tree lighting. I had some obligations that took me out of town, so I missed that, and I did miss that. Not only did I miss it, but I missed it. And so thank you to Greg for helping fill in my place in some of those things. And thank you to the whole community for continuing to do what you do. Leslie mentioned the Grove Foundation. Throughout the course of the year, you'll hear us talk about a variety of things, whether it's the Grove Express or the Grove Foundation or Junior Women's Club or any number of other things. It's a community filled with people who are finding their place to do their part, and it's really pretty awesome. It's part of the biggest part of what, frankly, makes Downers Grove so cool. As a kind of note for the evening's process tonight, we're going to take a short pause in our meeting. We're going to move over to the committee room and talk about our Fairview business district plan. And then after that, we're actually going to be going to an executive session. So our meeting is going to end a little bit oddly tonight, but we'll take a little 5-minute break right now, and we'll reconvene over in the committee room. Continue on our agenda tonight under the manager's report and discuss further our Fairview focus area. We've got things to talk about tonight that probably won't get totally settled tonight, but we're going to have Stan kind of lead us off with a little presentation.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening again, Mayor, Council, staff members, and public. As the Mayor mentioned, we'll be talking about the Fairview Focus Area Implementation Plan tonight. This is our agenda to talk a little bit about description, talk about the planning boundaries, overall concepts, and then a Fairview 1, Fairview 2, Fairview 3 concept as well. As you know, the project that we're looking at consists of a bunch of different items here. We talked about this in our last meeting. Some of them are short-term, mid-term, long-term. Tonight we're going to continue on as a short-term with defining the area that include the project and the pursuit of zoning ordinance and zoning map amendments. As we talked about in our last meeting last month, there's a comprehensive plan, the regulatory framework that ultimately becomes a zoning ordinance. So tonight we're here at the regulatory framework. This is about taking the vision that was identified in the comprehensive plan and develop key concepts for discussion. The key concepts are designed to produce the desired results in the comprehensive plan, and then it allows for discussion and concurrence among the village. What we heard at the last meeting was our map was pretty good. We did include this little corner property here in the focus area that we talked about there. So that's in there, so the map's been modified. We took the goals from the comprehensive plan and the discussion that we had at the last meeting where we talked about this to develop an idea that is permissive, flexible, and includes the mix of uses in this area within the Fairview focus area here. So what you'll see tonight is a lot of ideas about things being permissive and flexible with a mix of uses both with uses and in buildings as well.
Could you just say the names of the streets on the two ends? I can't read.
Sure. So this is Fairview Avenue here in the middle.
Right.
Maple is our diagonal here. This is Prospect Avenue to the west, and then all the way to the east, this is Williams here. This is 2nd Street, railroad tracks in the middle, and this is Sheldon up here.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I just can't read.
Yep. And then the school is right down here in the corner, so that's outside of the district area, focus area there. So when we looked at this based on council direction, we developed three areas that we thought might work as conceptual areas. Fairview 1 is this blue cloud, principally focused around the Fairview and Maple intersection, Fairview on the tracks, and Fairview and 2nd. And then a Fairview 2 area, which extends out along Burlington and Rogers there. As you can see, these are bubbled areas because we don't know exactly what the area is going to be at, but these are ideas and concepts that open up for some discussion about where these boundaries potentially could be. But again, just looking at some concepts and some concept areas. And then Fairview 3 is principally around the green areas on these other streets then, towards the edges of the Fairview focus area. So we'll go ahead and start talking about Fairview 1, which again is this blue sort of bubbled area here in the middle of this focus area. The description that we have was, as you know, we're going to start a comprehensive planning process, so the streetscape will be a part of that comprehensive planning process. So the idea with the description is to maintain the streetscape, because this is really Fairview and Maple in that area, walkable sidewalks, active sidewalks. In terms of height and density, we were talking about going up to 5 stories. A higher density, somewhat similar to the downtown density areas, and potentially a density bonus for inclusive housing as well. So this is an example of a 5-story building in a neighboring community. The form that we talked about a little bit with this Fairview 1 is buildings at or near the sidewalk. Again, more of an urbanized feel. Buildings built property line to property line, so not a lot of green space in this area. Sidewalks from curb to building, street trees, and tree grates. And then I know we have the design guidelines downtown, so if we were to go something this way to have this follow those downtown design guidelines, because a lot of the ideas that are here are similar to the built form that we might be seeing in the downtown, with some differences for height and density. Parking, would be looking at potentially reduced parking regulations. There's on-street parking already that we can utilize. There's public lots, and then any parking we would want to see in the rear of the property just to maintain that street wall in this area here is Fairview 1. The uses, as we talked about, permissive and flexible, you see that used a lot in these slides tonight. Mixed uses throughout. Mixed-use buildings, we'd be looking for potentially mixed-use buildings with first-floor retail or office. Also to explore live-work units where somebody could have an office or something downstairs and live upstairs. Outdoor dining is something we think could work in this area, both on private and public property. So again, a little bit of a mix there. A lot of different retail uses, restaurants, animal care and boarding, dry cleaners, arcades, offices. So really trying to get a mixture of uses in here, and some uses that maybe we wouldn't see in the downtown. So like jewelry makers or artist studios where there's just a little bit more of a niche thing where they're actually making things there. So a little bit more of a small manufacturing, a little jewelry shop that's making jewelry there and selling out of the space there. Multifamily residential above, and we could also explore including micro units, which are smaller units that have basically studio units that are smaller but affordable and attainable for people moving into the community or downsizing potentially. Exclusions, we'd be looking to exclude large-scale manufacturing, warehousing, auto-related uses. Really trying to make this more of a pedestrian-friendly area there and a pedestrian-oriented area in the Fairview 1. Moving on to Fairview 2, you can see the bubbles. They sort of overlap in some of these areas here because we need to have further discussion about where the bubbles end up. But again, generally around 2nd Street and then down Rogers to the west. Fairview 2, again, this is a streetscape by the comprehensive plan consultant to tie into downtown connection. In this district, we'd be looking at location that influences characteristics. So a little bit of a transition area here where residential characteristics near residential properties. So maybe if we're getting closer to some of the residential neighborhoods or further away from Fairview 1, this might be a little bit more green space in some of those yards. But if we're really right next to a Fairview 1, maybe it's no setbacks, maybe it's just a sidewalk and a curb and a building there. So really trying to create some sort of a transition in this district. We still want to keep it walkable and we still want active sidewalks in these areas as well. With height and density, it's a 3-story to try to go from higher in the middle out as we get to the residential and the neighboring areas. There are properties near the railroad tracks, so in terms of density and height, maybe a little bit more dense, a little bit more height for the railroad tracks if you're close to the railroad tracks, so you'd almost have a step building in concept. It's just looking to try to create some density there, but maintaining separation from some of the adjacent residential zoning districts. Density, concept is a little bit higher than the existing, but less than Fairview 1 to try to, again, have the more intense uses and density in the Fairview 1 and come down. Again, potentially a density bonus for inclusive housing. So this is something we can talk about. Again, the form, again, like we talked about, location is going to influence characteristics. We talked about it a little bit. Green parkways with street trees and sidewalks, so more of a typical street, curb, parkway with grass, street tree, sidewalk, grass, and then a building. And then we want to make sure that we're buffered from immediately adjacent residential to ensure that there's not a lot of impact. We can look at reduced parking regulations for multifamily, on-street parking, parking lots, and located in the rear of the property again. So really trying to create a really welcoming front door for these businesses and people using those businesses. Uses, pretty much exactly the same as the Fairview 1. The only difference is outdoor dining will be on private property only. So that would be allow private businesses, private restaurants to have that. And then multifamily residential, where Fairview 1, we talked about having it where it's above a retail or an office space. Here, it could be principally just all a multifamily building there. Again, micro units as well, and the exclusion would be the same as well. So Fairview 1, Fairview 2 are pretty similar. This is in the staff report manager memo as well about some of the differences. So principally, it's the height. It's 5 stories in the Fairview 1, 3 stories. Generally in the Fairview 2, but potentially a height bonus closer to the tracks. Density similar to our downtown. In the Fairview 2, it'd be somewhat more than what's out there already, but maybe less than what's proposed for Fairview 1. Form, we would have no setbacks, right up to the building line, build to zone, items like that. And then the form, again, the location would drive the characteristics. Multifamily above the first floor. Here again, you could just do a multifamily building. And outdoor dining, Fairview 1, both on public and private property, and Fairview 2, then only allowed on private property. So still incorporating outdoor dining, but just more of a private property matter. Moving on to Fairview 3, these bubbled areas in yellow are just sort of outside of the bubbled areas in blue and green, and again, the areas sort of mesh over each other a little bit. Fairview 3 is going to have more of a feel of a residential neighborhood. We still want it to be walkable, but there'll be more green space. So that includes some additional, parkway, green front yard, green side yard. Height and density, it's a 35-foot max current regulation. But then the other idea about density is, do we allow 2 principal structures per lot? That could be, a granny flat, a tiny home. Maybe it's a garage converted into a dwelling unit for another individual. The form, like we talked about, again, buildings setback from street, side, and rear property lines, street trees, sidewalks, a green parkway. And then we see this in a lot of areas close to downtown where single-family homes will be converted to offices. So maybe that could work in this area too. Parking regulations, we looked at potentially reduced parking regulations for multifamily. The business uses, on-site parking and on-street parking. There's not really any big parking lots in these areas, so it'd have to be on-street or on-site. The uses, again, you'll see permissive and flexible, as we talked about throughout this whole presentation. Looking at a variety of residential uses, so that could be single-family detached, townhomes, duplexes, apartments, condos, in-law units, in-law suites, inclusive housing, tiny houses. So really trying to bring a mix of housing options into this area. What's also looked at by staff is right now we do have home occupations. They're sort of limited in terms of what is allowed for home occupation. So maybe having looking at our home occupation allowances in this area to allow somebody to, if they make jewelry in the back in the kitchen, to have a little retail component, or for somebody if they need somebody to come in to buy something here, or if there's something with more employees. So maybe looking at more permissive home occupations. Again, live-work units, beauty salons, offices, professional offices. And then we do have some church or institutional uses in there as well. So to conclude, that's the conclusion of my presentation. This is the sort of the bubble map again about identified somewhat areas. here and be happy to answer any questions that you might have or just listen to the discussion. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Stan. So, this is, the purpose of this, as you know, is not to write a zoning ordinance tonight, or even to suggest what might get rezoned or zones changed, but really to talk about this middle section of what do we think in terms of really the things identified here. Form, function, uses, that kind of a thing. And I suspect that if you went around this table and picked out a certain topic, that might get defined differently by the folks sitting around the table. And so what needs to happen, I think, tonight is we need to start through that thing. We may not finish it tonight, but get down to the idea of let's talk out loud for each other and for the staff about what we mean, what we think we hear when we read these things or listen to Stan. So let's start. I think it's probably fair to say, but does anybody have any questions about boundary? You know, we kind of got to the end of that last time, but there was some revisions, and we're going to double check it today. Anybody see something different there? Okay. So what I'd like to do is really start on just a conversation. Anybody wants to start? Chris is raising his hand.
I just have a question for
Sure.
Stan before I get into the conversation. So Fairview 3, you talk about 2 principal structures per lot. Can you help me understand, are we talking about 2 principal structures for residents only, or could one of those structures be a little jewelry shop out back? Like, help me understand how that differs from live work.
So I think it could be either.
Okay.
I think that's something, if that's a
Yeah.
concept that we want to do, it could be a home with a garage converted to an office. It could be a home with a garage converted to another dwelling unit.
Okay. Or a retail space, potentially.
Potentially, yes, if we want to be permissive and flexible.
Okay. Because that's what 2 sounded, it sounded like 2, that was more the live work unit. I'm just making sure I understand that as we make the decision. So it sounds like in 3, 2 principal isn't just a house with an in-law shed. It could be a house with potentially a workspace or potentially a small, like, artisan retail.
It could
Yeah.
also be, and if we were looking to be permissive and
Yeah.
flexible, it could be a small commercial space that is an office.
Got it.
With a smaller home behind it.
Got it. Okay. Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
So anybody want to just start weighing in with opinions on stuff? Or we can certainly go down the road of additional questions if anyone's got additional questions about definitions. All right, I got a definition question. Picking up on where Chris was going, or tangential to his question, the 2 versus 3. So I'm trying to, sometimes it's easier to give examples, for instance. When we had, I think 2, as I understood it, was intended to be similar to what we had in the existing downtown, where we had, houses that were 100% commercial, right? Offices right now. One of those at one time had a retail, sort of retail space behind it in a garage. The primary building, original primary home was an office. The garage behind was an additional different business. That's sort of different, right? That's sort of the difference between 2 and 3 right now is sort of contemplated?
Yes, I think it's contemplated that in 3 there would be potentially 2 principal structures. In 2 we hadn't contemplated 2 principal structures on the lot. I think we had talked about trying to provide different housing variety with the 2 structures. But if we wanted to be more flexible, that could also be commercial flexibility there too.
Right, we might have 2 different uses in the same structure, as opposed to different structures.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
So staff didn't flesh that one out very much when we put this together. We would love to hear the council talk more about these issues that Chris and Box put on the table like that. So.
Well, I'll start in on one of the reasons that question was in my forefront is because the second structure is something that I don't have a solid opinion on. I'm right now struggling to square up in my head the difference, because I think there is one, between a built structure specifically for a second resident. And the idea of so if somebody has a house, they put a container or a small house in the backyard with the intention of renting it to somebody else, that's one thing. In my mind, that is different than somebody who takes their garage and converts it for their in-laws. And we sort of have a little bit of that in our existing code, right? We made some adjustments that allow for that. There's a family relation kind of component to it. So my gut right now, absent listening to everybody else talk, is to be interested in sort of a duplication of what we do now, which is not the same as I think what's kind of written here.
So keep playing that out, man. If we buy into the concept of two principal structures on a lot, are you thinking that they're residential only?
Yeah.
Or, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
And they're not that different. They're somehow related to our existing code, which I think requires them to be, if they're two separate families, they got to be related or something, right? We have, help me, I'm struggling. Especially, it's a special use and they got to be related.
Yes, and it's got to be in the principal structure of the property.
Yeah.
So you can't have two structures and have the in-law suite currently. An extended family has to be part of the main house.
Yeah, so it's
Or
like
attached to the main house.
like an attached garage area above an attached garage kind of a thing.
Correct.
Yeah,
So in the most technical sense, this concept on the table, when staff threw out the idea of two principal structures on a lot, that's technically a multi-family
Yeah.
approach.
Yeah. So my first person to converse tonight, so I'm not listening to anybody else yet, but my first thought on this is I'm not interested in a second completely independent structure that is residential only for somebody that's not part of the family of the main structure.
So to retain a single-family approach.
Right.
A little bit of a different take on that. First of all, well done, and this is very similar to what we've seen before, where more height, more density in the core. As you start to move out, you have more and more transition into your traditional residential neighborhood. That same concept, and again, I want to not necessarily conflate or link structures and uses, because you can have different uses and different structures for uses. There's all different combinations. It's a Rubik's Cube. So I want to be a little bit more creative in what we can do and reserve some more options, but do that consistent with this start in the core and move out to a more traditional neighborhood. I agree with you, Mayor, that if we're at the edges in the yellow, then we're going to want to be a lot more like the existing neighborhood. But as we get close to that core, I'd like to be more innovative and experimental, candidly. Now, what does that look like? I mean, the first thing I thought of was the tiny houses, the micro units, whatever you want to call them. And that's a big deal and can create all kinds of different opportunities for affordability, for innovation, for environmental sustainability, all the things that we've been talking about for months. I would like to, if we can, reserve more options, more twists of that Rubik's Cube in the core, and understanding that you're also going to have business opportunities and things like that. And then as you move out, you get a little bit more traditional, because then you start to get into the neighborhoods and you want to maintain that transition. But I think we got to reserve space that's maybe not immediately in the existing residential neighborhood, where we can be a little bit more creative, a little more innovative. And I give staff a lot of credit for identifying some of these things, because we talk about these things in concept. Now we start to get down to things like structures and uses. We can start playing around with that. And I realize you have to set the rules, but to allow flexibility so that you may not like two structures, but you do like two uses. And then you've got the issue of existing structures and maybe changing the uses, or you start thinking about what can be built on existing land. Now, I haven't investigated the whole micro unit thing enough. I know some people substantially younger than me who have. And I think there's some significant opportunities there that we might want to at least think about. But just generally speaking, my view is consistent with the core, more dense, more opportunities, more incentives for different types of uses and price points. And as you expand out, it gets a little bit more traditional, which is similar to what we do elsewhere. There's always these buffer areas where and usually they're well received, because you're not plopping something very different down in the middle of the neighborhood. You're kind of blending to it.
That's what this does, though. The question I'm raising is
it does with density. So we normally talk about density and setbacks and all that stuff.
Right.
Now we're talking about some other things. We're also playing around with the Rubik's Cube on uses, which I think is an exciting opportunity here, given this comprehensive approach to really redesigning this whole corridor.
Right, but in those number 3, currently bubbled number 3 areas, those are the places that are outside the core, outside the secondary DT-ish area and adjacent to traditional residential uses. So in those spaces.
So you're only talking about 3?
That's all I'm talking about.
Okay, I thought you were talking about all 3 of them.
No, in those spaces, in those section 3 on this, which is the outside.
I agree with you. I thought you were
I'm not
talking
looking
about
for
all of
that.
them.
No.
If you're just talking about 3, then that would be the place where you would start to
Right.
blend into the more traditional neighborhood. I was talking more 1 and 2.
No, I think everything, my take is really frankly that I like just about everything that's here except that one piece.
I got you.
Mike?
Yeah, I would say, so in the Fairview 3 area, we look at, for instance, I look at along Rogers Street, along the north side of Rogers Street there. I think, yes, adjacent to, existing single family, it's probably R3, R4 on those lots behind. But along the street, I would be very much in favor of allowing for, duplexes, things of this nature that don't require there's some sort of familiar relationship between the residents.
But is that a single structure on one lot?
Yeah.
It's a single structure.
Right.
Right.
But it could be 2 units.
Well, but see, this is where I'm getting, is I think we need to be careful what we're talking about.
Yeah.
If we're talking about a duplex or a townhome, no one's going to have an issue about that.
Right.
I think Bob's talking about something
Yeah,
different.
the duplex question is one that is kind of already settled in our existing code across town. There's places that allow it right now that have single-family homes. The question that's not right now in our code is the allowance of a second, or think almost flag lot-ish, right?
Yeah.
Separate, completely different housing unit on a parcel, which is not the same as a duplex. Duplexes are currently allowed in various places.
Yeah, so I was just going to say, our current single-family zoning does not allow for a single structure to have 2 unrelated families living in it.
Right.
So let's put some fine points on this and see where this discussion goes. So we're going to talk now Fairview 3. We have an existing single-family house.
Mm-hmm.
First question is, what do you think about allowing that single-family house to be a duplex? 2 unrelated families living in what was built as a single-family house, like converted. Duplex is okay in the 3?
I think so.
Yes.
I grew up in one.
Right?
Yep.
Absolutely.
So this is in 3 duplexes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah?
No. Yeah, I'm willing to think about it, but I'm not sure I'd go there. I think it depends on what we're talking about and what the zoning is. If we're talking about something that's already zoned R4, R5, I might think about it. If we're talking about something else, I'm not so sure. There are some areas that I think it might make a lot of sense. I think along Rogers, in particular, you might see whether it's more townhomes or row homes or duplexes. I think it makes a lot of
So
We
Greg's
have
talking
those now
about
already,
it's
don't we?
not always the
There's
same answer.
There's some already there.
There are some,
Yeah.
yeah, there's, in fact, a new townhome development went up, a pitching wedge from my house.
Yeah.
Last year.
No, my pitching was way part of the right. You're talking, Craig, if I heard you right, then there's some areas within the yellow you're thinking, yeah, maybe in some areas not so much. When Stan said character, location
Matters.
Yeah, location.
is right.
Location influences characteristics.
Maybe
Absolutely.
uses too,
That-
right?
Yeah.
And to pull that thread a little further, what I'm sort of in the same boat as Bob here. If we're talking about, somebody building a second structure in their backyard to monetize, I have zero interest in that.
Let's go there
Anywhere,
next.
period, end of story.
So, yeah, I'd love to hear more conversation about that, though.
Martin, you were-
Why is it a negative?
I think once you introduce that and you couple it with things like Airbnb, you come back with something that starts to look a heck of a lot less like a suburban neighborhood than I think anybody in Downers Grove is ready for.
I'm trying to picture an example of that. Like, it doesn't look like,
So I've got a detached garage. I turn it into a studio apartment and rent it out.
okay,
I don't believe that should be allowed,
why not?
because I think that is fundamentally different than what you look for when you move to a suburban community. if you want something like that, I think you end up living in the city.
So Greg, I'm going to interpret that as the concept of two principal structures, right?
Yeah, I have zero interest.
No, so Greg's saying.
In a buffer area.
Anyway.
We're also getting 3 here.
Well, I'm just.
No, he's
well,
saying 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Got it.
Yeah, what the staff has presented with regard to areas 1 and 2, I'm pretty much there. I love the idea of the density allowance in the event of additional affordable units, things like that. I think that's the right way to go. When it comes to the two principal structures, I'm just not there, and I'm not going to get there.
Anybody else want to comment on the two principal structures?
Yeah, I'm in that same boat with Greg. I have no interest in two principal structures. Duplexes, of course.
Yeah, good. Okay.
I'll comment. I actually would be okay with exploring that. If I'll put on my council hat and not my personal hat of I don't love the idea of landlords and monetizing and making money off of other people's need to exist and live in a community. Yeah. That being said, people still rent. So I think the more options that we can give people closer to a residential community where they can start their professional careers and see if this is a place that they want to live, I think the better. That is, to me, fundamentally different than an Airbnb or a short-term rental, which I know we do not allow anyway. I'm not necessarily interested in going that route. But in terms of a longer-term rental where, a young professional can just try and get a foot in the community along the train line, in more of that, is this a suburb? Is this where they want to live? I think the better. So I disagree. I'm interested in seeing two potential principal structures. I think it can really either be beneficial for, whether it would be a senior who wants to age in place and stay a connection in their community, or it could be, like I said, a young person just trying to, just trying to stay in the community where they work. I've talked to so many folks who work in some of our downtown businesses, obviously, not management, but who want to desperately live here, but are struggling to find a place are struggling to find a place close to where they work. Would
a better answer to that, if that's the problem we're trying to solve, would a better answer to that be a broader area where we would allow traditional apartments?
It could, but there is something a little bit different about being a little bit closer to a residential neighborhood.
No, I know,
you know what I mean?
Like if you look at this right now, right,
Yeah.
there's apartments that are immediately adjacent to residential houses, right?
Yes, they are.
And so that is, I think to Greg's point, not unexpected in a suburban community, right?
Yeah.
Whereas a second little house in the back is. And if you were trying to create an environment where there were more units available, then broadening the areas that are, I don't know, whatever they would be, R5 or whatever, but places where we would allow 3 and 5 stories of multi-tenant housing, incentivized in some way, like we were talking on these other spots, would be, in my mind, first of all, probably more impactful because a hell of a lot more units.
It is.
And would maintain some of the expectations of sort of the people that are already here and the people that are moving to the suburbs to be in the suburbs, right?
Barbara, you said?
And just to jump on one of your points, Leslie, with regard to Airbnb, I mean, you're right, we don't allow it right now.
Yeah.
But how many resources do we realistically devote to trying to enforce that?
I mean, sure, but if there was a neighbor who's upset because they're seeing a rotating band of folks, we're gonna figure it out pretty fast. It's gonna be a complaint pretty fast. But I guess the only caveat that I will give, and whether or not this is big enough or not, we can try and figure out, but the benefit, I think, of that secondary structure is the non-shared walls, whether it be, a single mom with a baby who is worried about noise or a person with a pet with, noise.
Sure.
There is a benefit, and it's probably because I'm one of those people. I would never be able to live in the city because of the noise. I love to hear crickets at night, right? And so not having neighbors or people above me or next to me is a benefit. And so that's just something, I'm not saying, it has to convince you, but it's something to consider, that is the difference for me for that secondary principal structure would be, it would give somebody a more autonomous unit, to kind of work with and get their start on. So that's just my consideration. One thing that I would love to do is to know if there even really is an appetite for this. I know I mentioned it, and I'm going to bring it up again. The Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus, it would be really great to engage them as we're going through this fair review process, to know, we're talking about potentially increasing density to move forward, and I think that's something that we could necessarily do without the data, but I think it would be great to engage them and see exactly what those units and that affordable housing would look like, and which populations need it the most, and that may actually help us make some of these decisions too. So just a little pitch for that.
I'm gonna give you a little sneak peek of next week's agenda. When you see the comprehensive plan consultant engagement appear on the first reading agenda, there will be information about the level of detail of the housing analysis, which may hit on some of those things. So that's a great conversation. I think,
Awesome.
for next week.
Perfect.
We'll see that coming. So.
I will save it then. But going back to, that single unit where, you're not having any shared walls, I think for a lot of folks who are just trying to get a foot in the suburbs would be really appealing. Just something to consider.
Are there any,
I just don't think it's that, well, I mean, I'm just thinking about the economics of that. I mean, what you're talking about is not realistically going to happen. And so I don't know if it's worth even
How so?
land price to build 2 units.
no, you already own it and throw a container in the back. No, seriously.
Well, I mean, you still have code requirements.
Right.
You
Yeah,
can't just
right.
throw a container in the back.
Okay, but you can build a 900 square foot or 800 square foot thing in your backyard pretty inexpensively.
Well, there's stormwater management.
Yeah, here's the thing, guys. Unless you're gonna also rent control. Yeah, but unless you're also gonna rent control, as we well know, that kind of space in this kind of location with your non-shared walls is not gonna be cheap.
No, it's economically infeasible.
And so, yeah, there's stormwater, there's code, sure, but you can also command a pretty
I thought you were talking about building somebody would build a business on the property and live behind it.
That's not what I was talking about.
Yeah.
I'm talking about like what Greg said, somebody takes a garage and converts it, and then you don't even have a stormwater thing.
Right. Well, that's not a structure.
That is, speaking to 2 principal structures, Martin, can I ask you to pull that thread just a little bit? That would be one example of 2 principal structures. Somebody takes an existing detached garage, converts it into what becomes a standalone house by definition, meets building code, and all of a sudden you have 2 principal structures in a lot. Yay? No?
Right. Well, that's... So you've got something that currently exists, it meets all the codes, it has one owner, and they turn the garage into, I was thinking they were turning it into a business. You're saying they turn the garage into...
I can say you can't turn that garage, nobody's gonna have a detached garage that has a frost-free foundation around it.
I don't know how you do that.
To allow you to convert, you would have to build a garage that would have a code foundation.
There's a lot of second floor garages available. Absolutely, you could.
You have to build the
You
garage.
have to build it, we're talking about existing garage.
Most existing detached garages are built with a thickened slab edge, and you can't do that for occupiable space. So there wouldn't be a rush of people taking their detached garages and turning them into accessory dwelling units, which is what we're...
So the question we should be asking, though, is not, do we, sitting around this table on December 5th, think we understand the finances? We should be asking ourselves, do we think we want that environment? Do we think we want those uses? Are we expecting to try and do things that cause that to be more or less likely to be done?
Right, change my hypothetical. I tear down my garage and build something that meets
Right.
code.
Yeah.
I still don't like it.
Why don't we like it? You've just invested a lot of money. You just invested a lot of money in this separate structure, right? And you own the property. You'd like to rent it out to somebody. In these specific Fairview 3 areas, why would that be something that would be out of character? It would look from the outside. It all looks like everything else that's in the neighborhood. Doesn't look any different.
I would say asked and answered. I stand by what I've already said.
Can I ask a question, since I haven't
Let me pull
had
this
an
one just a
opportunity
little
to talk?
further.
And
Yeah, let me finish this.
Fine.
I don't really want to hear Chris talk, that's the key to this whole thing. But I'm trying to look at other ways to maybe get at what Leslie's identifying as a goal. And so another thing that I think, I would have an interest in exploring more is in these areas, what about different lot sizes? Right, because to your point, would it look any different? Well, maybe not. Maybe they're just narrower lots with smaller setbacks, and that results in multiple units in the same overall area. Because it's still, you would come back to the idea that the next ring around the pond, the residential units, your existing residential units, the next ring outside the circle would see and experience something more like what they expect. They'd just be tighter homes, which we have right now between 1 and 4, you have various different lot sizes. Chris?
Yeah, so I guess my question is, regarding Fairview 3, why this area for this two principal structure? Like, I understand 2. I'm 3 seems there just seems to be, is there something about the nature of this area? I think I understand Rogers, because I think it almost exists there. If you built 2 structures as opposed to the 5 unit, there's a few on there already. I guess, is there something inherent to these areas that make them good candidates for a 2 principal structure lot?
I think these areas principally right now are residential in character.
Okay.
So there's not there's apartments in some of these.
Yep.
There's some, there's some row houses, some townhomes in there. There's some duplexes. There's a variety of residential uses. And so in an effort to try to create increased density without necessarily going up, that's a way to increase density and provide more.
So the thought would be, on one of these lots, let's just say that has an apartment building on there, we are talking about allowing 2 structures on that? That's what we're saying. They could basically build 2 apartment buildings on that same lot.
Which is where your density requirement, if we jump forward, we actually ask NZSTN to write an ordinance.
Yeah.
That's where it might bump up against whatever density this council sets.
And parking, usually it's parking and density that sometimes drive things.
So those concepts seem like 2 different things to me. The idea of allowing a resident that has a single-family home to add a second structure for family or business or otherwise seems like a very different question than allowing lots to have multiple buildings on them that could be apartment buildings. It seems that to me feels like 2 different things. So I'll just throw that out there as a comment. I'm a little bit. Everyone has made, I think, good points about for and against. I'm struggling a little bit with the idea of, if we're allowing a second structure, the restrictions, because I believe there should be, but I'm not sure how you apply that in a reasonable and systematic way.
But what's helping is the more the council talks through this, sort of fine-tuning what this ordinance might look like. Yes to this kind of stuff, not so much to this.
So going back to your original question, May, or your thought of like 2 principal but family connected. I don't know, that's tough. Define family. Define lots of ways that we cohabitate with people. I don't know, that one feels a little tougher to me.
We do it now.
I know we do.
And so it has to be connected, not a separate structure.
Right.
A separate dwelling unit, but it's connected.
If you're in a multifamily zone, you have particular special uses. Right.
So what's the criteria if someone has you're talking about it has to be connected, and you can have I'm not sure I understand how a connected becomes 2 different.
That would be one principal structure occupied as a multifamily. It would be a multifamily one structure.
Okay, but what is our, I don't want to bog everything down, but what is our definition of what allows you? I assume we're saying if people are in the same family, they can live in that environment. We allow that.
Right.
what is the definition of in the family?
Right, so we have a definition of family in our ordinance
Yeah,
we can share with everybody. We
Okay.
also have definitions of dwelling units in our ordinance. And
Okay.
the Rubik's Cube that Martin mentioned is how you play with these things.
Yeah.
You know,
But don't think you're bogging anything down.
Okay.
This conversation is
Okay.
exactly what's needed for each other and for staff.
Yeah, I don't, so I'll just say, I don't think I'm super interested in the VRBO model and watching all of these places get turned into it. It doesn't feel like that's what it's not what I would want to see. So I'll speak for myself. But I am struggling with limiting on on what that second structure could be used for. That's where I'm having a little bit of a,
so I'll put you in the middle for now and we'll talk.
yeah, I think so.
Okay. I thought Chris asked a really fascinating question. Why did staff propose this here? Let me connect some dots here. So when the staff threw out the first planning boundary a couple of weeks ago, back in October, November, we had a smaller area. And the council said, we want to apply, when the council expanded the planning boundaries, we took that as, that means the council wants to apply the comprehensive plan recommendations in a broader area. When we heard that, we went, oh, well, what are the key concepts in the comprehensive plan? Flexibility.
Right.
So that's what drove it.
Yeah.
And then when Stan pointed out that these areas have all those attributes, that's what drove staff to go, oh, well, this could be an idea
Yeah.
that the council
Yeah.
might want to talk about.
Just didn't know if there was anything inherent to them, but that makes sense.
So other than this subject, there's a lot of stuff in here we can still talk about and try and make some progress on. Danny?
I wanted to see if anybody else had any interest in regards to Fairview 1. I know we wanted to be permissive and flexible, but I was wondering if anybody else shared the opinion that we might want to limit the uses in at least the ground floor or even potentially part of Fairview 1 to include, I mean, mostly all those uses I think are great uses, but I would say maybe not the offices in an effort to increase the vibrancy of this area.
Retail.
Yeah,
More retail?
Sorry.
First floor retail requirement.
First floor retail. I mean, I'm okay. I think like some of these other like services are great too, but the offices maybe to a second floor or rear or.
Yeah, we've tried that.
It's annoying. Yeah.
We struggled with it a little.
It's a
on
good
Main
idea.
Street. Yeah, it is.
But
It's a phenomenal
it's-
idea. It hasn't quite worked.
No.
Can you expound on that? Why?
It's not been, it's just, what we've bumped into is big empty spaces with potential filling. And so your question for the area becomes, at least the way we've talked about in the past, is what's more vibrant? People going in and out of a place, or people looking at a place that says it's for rent? That's kind
Realtor's
of the
office is
question.
what we're talking
Agreed,
about here.
but could they?
The
for
national change
special
can pay
use?
the rent,
I
otherwise
see.
they're vacant, so get a landlord saying, I got a big
Do that,
empty
say that
space."
again when everybody's listening.
I was just saying, like, if it ends up vacant, couldn't an office come in for a special use? Or any other business that we,
At some point, we're going to characterize, permitted, special, right? So that is a question. But that,
I mean,
Chris,
I
that's
think
that's been sort of the historical.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I mean, I would agree with Danny from the standpoint of where we are now with office space and how much we anticipate is going to become available over the next couple of years as the workforce has what seemingly is permanently shifted to a hybrid model. So, so Danny, I think I could see something like that where we were focused less on that and more on the retail.
Well, the question is what you
Yeah.
allow and what you prohibit.
Yeah.
And the question is, are you going to require first floor retail, which means you're essentially prohibiting office, you're prohibiting banks, you're prohibiting.
I mean, I might look at it the other way instead of what I allow, just prohibiting office and then let the chips fall with the other areas that we are allowing, or jeweler.
So we don't require first floor retail right now in the downtown.
See, that's, I agree.
We don't.
We'd rather have retail.
Absolutely.
But we have this issue with the downtown, where if we had that requirement, we'd have spaces sitting there empty right now.
That's a good question.
Is what we're hearing. And if
Do
you
we have
can't
an
make,
idea?
if you can't make the retail, you can't enforce retail only in the
Sure.
downtown right now, I don't know
How we
how
do it there.
we do it there.
We'd love to do
Although
that.
I agree, that's why I would like, I would, it's better to see the space occupied than not.
Vacant.
Yes. 100%.
We did have it in the Acadia buildings.
Yeah.
We had to make some adjustments.
Well, then I guess I would like to know what
Land
percentage of
development.
downtown
Well, yeah.
is office on the first floor versus retail. And maybe we look at that as a guide to say, we're shooting for 70% retail. I don't know, like use that to inform.
I would also suggest that that's something we can get to later.
Oh, okay.
Because I think if we categorize the general uses, which I think is what staff is trying to do
Yeah.
here, is give you general uses, we can tweak that
Okay.
later. Because that same issue is
Yeah.
live right now with the downtown.
Sure. Yeah, that's a fair point.
Steph loves hearing every idea right now.
Okay.
We're taking it all in. right?
Well, then you're going to love this one. One thing I did not see on the list is entertainment. And we saw some artisan type things, but not art. And I have a feeling that something live theater, live music, something there
Yes.
needs to be included in that. So
Yeah,
I,
you're right. We
yeah.
just didn't, we talked about that, we didn't make the report.
Okay,
Absolutely.
yeah, I think that's important.
So
Good catch.
theater, live music, other forms of live entertainment, right?
Yeah.
Other forms of entertainment. In 1 and 2, right?
Yes.
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 Yes, 1 and 2.
Lots of video gaming.
No.
In you. I was thinking, zip it.
Just trying to get that improv troupe started.
Yeah.
And then the other comment, I guess, since no one else is talking, I love the idea of inclusive housing density, all that work I think was great. The live work is, I think, really important right now.
I
And I
agree.
think if
I
we
agree.
can create that,
Yeah.
this area that has that, I think that's going to be really, really important. So those were the 3 things, but
Yeah.
everything else looked really well thought through, and I think a palette that we can work from.
What's the other head nods on that? I saw
Yeah,
it's the
yes.
whole inclusive housing density bonuses, live work arrangements,
Yes,
that kind of stuff.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
I
yes.
think those are
Okay.
crucial.
So I'd like to just kind of reiterate something that was shared earlier, is the transition sort of idea, starting with something more dense and kind of coming out from there. It's just like the way our zoning currently works with downtown. We have our downtown core, and we have our DT district adjoining that, and then we fall into the single family. And so that's, for those watching at home, that's kind of how we're approaching this as well, right?
But I do want to point out one thing, though.
Yes, there is,
Yeah,
go
go ahead,
ahead.
Mike.
No, you go ahead.
In 2018-ish, 2019-ish, there was a change to the downtown. It still has core and then transition concepts. But there's the
core
lower
is-
height in the core.
Yeah.
Yes.
On Main Street,
Right.
then it was up and then back.
That was be-
And this
Important
proposal
distinction.
was-
That's
Yeah, this
because of the
proposal was.
historic downtown.
Yes,
Yes.
important distinction.
Well, it
This is
was-
a more
Historic.
traditional height.
No.
Yes.
Main Street.
Yeah, not at all. Yeah.
Understood.
There was historical commentary there, but there was also just the sheer idea of trying to avoid creating a, canyon
Right.
on the downtown's feel, whether it was historic or not. Nobody was interested in sort of the canyon effect that could occur.
Absolutely. So, and then the other thing that, just to reiterate, the comp plan and what's been stated tonight, the permissive flexibility, and I'll just add to that, I brought this up prior, that this is, I think this is kind of an incubator for ideas too, right? So this is a place for us to maybe try out some things that we're not currently allowing elsewhere in town, to see if it has some success, see if it has some applicability. This is the perfect place, to explore some of those ideas. So, the discussion around the separate structure and dwelling unit, I think if we were going to try something like that, this is the ideal place to try something like that. And I look forward to further discussion about it. I'm also not interested in the vacation by owner model here or something like that either. But I am interested in allowing for more flexibility and opportunity for different types of housing, different situations that we're currently not allowing for our teachers, for kids just graduating college, people who graduate high school, get a decent paying job, and would like to still live here. And even if it is, even with the family situation, so nice to, if I've got a kid, coming home from school or something, having them have their own place to live, separate from mine, not without the shared walls. I can tell you that we've designed homes or additions on homes for the senior parents moving back in with the younger family to help with the kids, but yet they want their own separate space. And right now, I can't really do that. I have to. There is provision in the ordinance for us. You apply for it, you have to get approved, you have to reapply for it. If you don't reapply for it, it's an issue. And I would like to see that kind of thing go away.
It's pretty different than a separate structure, though.
Yeah, well, I get it, but.
You're talking about the in-law and ADUs.
Right.
Right.
But
that's a different story.
To have the ability to live separately, but yet together is pretty valuable right now. And for us to come up with ways to make that happen easier than what we're currently doing, I'd like for us to figure that out. And we'll get into that, I guess, when we get into the zoning, right? And then, so when we get to that zoning work, I think it would be helpful for everybody to maybe see the differences between what's being proposed and maybe what's currently allowed. I think this would be helpful for the public as well as us as a council to better understand what we're actually, the changes that we're proposing and what that will mean versus, as it currently exists. And it'll be, whether we're talking about 1, 2, or 3, I think it could be somewhat significant. So having some sort of matrix or something where you can see those things would be helpful for me. That's
Yeah, one thing we haven't also touched on is just potentially green space connections and that little bit of outdoor dining, especially, outdoor spaces that we discussed, especially in one. I know there's some potential, it was mentioned for public areas. If we're going to be kind of re-envisioning this and not just making do with what we have, I really do want us to be a little bit more visionary in what that looks like. So not taking up sidewalks, not taking up street space, but actually having dedicated property and land for, potential outdoor enjoyment on these properties. I think that's something that I would like to think about and keep in mind. And then again, it would give us some options for green space, a little bit better for, sustainability, and also then, beautification and connections to the downtown. So that's just something that I kind of want to put out there.
Are you talking about long-term trying to have us buy land, or are you talking about creating code elements that encourage that?
A little bit of both.
Well,
We're
'cause-
talking about streetscape design, which is also coming and starting to work
Yeah,
on.
well, the streetscape design, I guess I'm thinking is completely independent, but we're talking now about potential zoning, which talks about the definitions of what can and can't be used on an individual parcel. And in the downtown spaces, we're sort of doing the same thing we've done downtown here, which is require build-tos. So, I mean, that works against that.
Right,
That's
it
not-
does, yeah.
So,
Yeah, I was just going to make that same comment, that
Yeah.
maybe if there is going to be, if something's being proposed that has
Yeah.
a outside eating, dining element to it,
Mm-hmm.
then in order to do that, maybe there is a setback along the street to create more space for that to
A little
happen.
bit more flexibility.
So some
And-
design regs for, okay, got it.
And honestly, I think that could create a nice feel along Fairview specifically. To have things, instead of this wall, but to be able to have things move in and out a little bit, contextually, I think it has a nicer look to it as well. And we also want to stay away from further conversations about taking away parking to create dining. So this would be a way
Yeah.
to work with that as well.
Drive-in diner.
Hey,
Problem solved. Next question.
We just got rid of the elevators.
that's you're going to have to think that through a little bit, because that's a pretty material difference from what's proposed here. We, up until a minute ago, we
Yep.
were all nodding
Yep.
on what's on the paper here, and that changes out. Not that it's wrong or bad,
Right,
just,
right.
well, we talked about flexibility, though.
yeah, but at some point, you're not flexible. At some point, your zoning is your zoning.
Yeah.
Your lot definition is your lot definition. So if you're requiring build-tos, then you don't have space for that. You're either going to require it or not.
Or, I don't know. I mean, we're either going to require it or not. I mean,
If you're requiring a build-to zoning, like we have in the downtown, which is what's anticipated in the area 1 here, then you can't just come along and say, yeah, but I want this building to be a little farther back off the lot line.
So
the-
go ahead, Stan.
So there are some provisions in the build-to zone. If you do create an outdoor green space, a certain percentage, I don't know off the top of my head, but there is something with the build-to zone that if it's so much, I don't know what it's called in the zoning ordinance, but there's a provision if there's a little step back in the building, it'd be so much of that whole percentage if that space is activated along the space. So if if you're required to put 50, I'm just throwing out numbers here.
Yeah, right.
If you're required to 50 feet of frontage, you can use 12 feet of, I'll say 12 feet of that frontage to bump back to have like an outdoor space, a patio or something like that, and still meet the build-to zone requirements. So it's not the whole,
So kind of like,
village back.
kind of like Marquee,
Yes.
right? Because they did that,
Marquee.
right?
Yeah.
They've got that,
Yeah, the little patio,
Yeah.
correct.
thanks for saving me.
Just not-
Because I was remembering some flexibility in
Yes,
that,
yeah, I
in the
was
built-to
too.
zone
Yeah.
requirement.
And so I'm also seeing an intersection between the streetscape plan, right?
Yeah.
That's coming and these regulatory framework, and if we can marry those up in this timeline that's coming up, it'll give us a better vision of how we might want to regulate, while we also want to design with our public space versus, right, so we're going to control our public space and
Yeah.
design it, and then we're going to regulate the private space and encourage them and give them boxes to
Yeah.
design it, right? So-
so like the density opportunities, it seems like that would be worth encouraging somehow. You know, I mean, like we used to do with, I'm going to screw this up too, but we used to have a thing relative to attached garage and porches to try and encourage certain behaviors.
Yeah.
From my perspective, if there was a way to encourage that, that would be a good thing. I think we all probably wish there was more open space downtown, right?
Yeah.
Right, so it's the classic and, it's both. It's built to urban wall, but it's also green spaces that are activated. It's greenways,
Yeah.
it's outdoor dining that's purposeful.
Yes.
Okay. We capturing that? Is that the idea? The ideas?
And I would just say, to piggyback on what Leslie said about the walkability and connectivity, I think a while back we talked about how it links to downtown, and I know we're stopping at I guess Prospect, but I feel like that has to be considered. The walkability and the active sidewalks, I think, is something I didn't mention earlier, but I think is something very important. That's all tied together with what we just talked about in many ways. But I want to make sure that I feel it's important that is a priority to this area, not an afterthought. That it is thought in that the idea that this is a walkable community, or section of our community.
Mike, you seem like you're getting ready to say something else.
I was going to ask, I believe that doesn't the DT zoning end at Prospect Avenue?
Yes.
Yes.
So
It does.
this basically brings our transition zone to the downtown's transition zone.
Literally connected.
I know they are, I know they're next to each other.
Yeah.
That doesn't necessarily mean connected in a way that is
No, I'm
thoughtful.
in
yes.
support of what you're saying.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that
They're accessory
actually-
planning.
They're already, we're
Yeah.
already
Yeah.
connected.
Sure.
And it's not that separate, and creating.
Yeah, I don't think they're separate.
Yeah.
I'm just want to make sure we're intentional in how they are connected once we're done with this.
Both in the regulatory fashion and in the streetscape designs that are going to happen simultaneously in the downtown at Fairview. If we can marry all three of those concepts up, we can probably
Thank
figure out how to
you.
get
Yes, exactly.
Should be thematic continuity.
Wow.
Oh, boy.
Someone write that down.
Anything else?
One question on the boundaries.
Yep.
Sorry to go back.
No.
Is there a reason why we didn't include that little sliver between, Rogers and Douglas? Where it's like the three corners there? Upper left-hand side of Fairview 1?
Up in this area right here? Or no, right on this way?
Like this here.
Oh, look at that, you can draw right on it. That's awesome.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I forgot, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean with
Whoa.
the blue?
Sorry.
No,
No, that's fine, we're all good. So, this is just, again, just conceptual. If this is something where we think we can go, we should include this in the blue, I think we can get into that.
Well, I think it's on
talk about
the-
those areas.
On the one sketch of I think you put together like a rendering of how it might look in the future, and I think in that rendering, not that I'm saying that this is gonna happen, but
In alignment?
Maple Avenue was
Right.
taken off, and that would make that pretty,
Yeah, so that was one of the concepts
Maple
that came out of the
Avenue.
comp plan, was to reroute Maple to come here in the north and then out this way, to create a larger redevelopment parcel. at
right,
that
and that would
location.
make sense to have that included in that very
Yes, it
one,
would.
right?
Yep.
Yeah, so if we end up, when we get to one of the other components of this multi-component project, if when we start talking about ways the village can facilitate private sector redevelopment, and we end up pursuing that realignment, we may have to come back and move some zoning boundaries, because it's a pretty classic approach that a major street would be a boundary line between two zoning
Yes.
districts. So we can do it now, and then if we pursue that as part of our strategy to create rectangle development sites instead of triangles, then we could probably adjust that zoning line when we do that.
Triangles are kind of dumb anyway. What's the downside of just drawing out?
my favorite shape.
Yeah, well, that's what happens when you're an architect. Architects and engineers.
Mike's catching strays over here.
What's the downside of thinking that way now and drawing those lines down? Because even if you didn't do anything, the village didn't do anything to facilitate, you still are creating a larger area associated with the sort of intents of one.
Yeah, I think when we can figure out like Sam was saying, where the blue, where the green, all that stuff conceptually, when we get into the details, once the concepts are sound, we would hesitate to put a zoning change to districts that would split a property or wouldn't align with the road. That's where the challenges come in, because then people come in Stan's office and go, what can I develop here? Well, on this half, you can do this.
Yeah, sure.
So that's why you try to use roads as the boundaries. So, but, we can see how it plays out, though, by the time we get to the zone mapping.
Yeah. You learning some stuff?
Yeah, so let me recap where I think staff is, and then anybody else in the staff, please join. This whole two principal structures versus types of uses, existing versus new, is an area the council took pretty far and asked a lot of questions. We got some work to do there. Next time we can come back and give you more ideas. And I also heard this idea of giving examples and then calling out how that relates to current code as a way to better conceptualize this would be helpful. So those are a couple of areas, things that we've heard. Also related to that, duplexes versus two principal structures versus short-term rental regs, all in the mix. We have to work on that as well. So those are my key takeaways that I think will further the next conversation. Stan, Enza, Mike, Jason, anything else you want to throw out there?
I thought I heard that we were generally supportive of Fairview 1 and Fairview 2 in some of the density and height discussions.
Yes.
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 So,
All right. What else on the staff team?
Definitely include the entertainment uses for the use list.
So from our perspective, Mayor, we figured this would take multiple meetings to work through. We expect that to happen. We expect other ideas to come up in meetings 2 and 3, et cetera. So we'll keep working and we'll bring it back in a couple weeks.
we got some visitors. Anybody want to give us some additional comments to consider between now and the next 2, 3, 4 meetings that come up?
Maybe your thoughts on triangles?
Yes. I'd love to hear your thoughts on triangles.
Circles.
Circles, okay.
I guess I'm a landlord over there, and so my concern in getting the regulations getting too in the weeds with, we can't have offices, we can have offices. It not only limits who I can rent to, but it also, like, that mix, that flexibility, that all that, you go to, right now, there's State Farm, you go there, you might go get your guitar looked at, you might get a bucket of chicken, and then you go home. It's not a bad thing. So I want you to, just that's my thought on that. And otherwise, there's a lot of work to be done, a lot of things. But that I would just watch that, because I don't know, it's way better to have things filled up. We've all been past those places that there's just a bunch of empty places, and you just I'm just keeping going. Because you'd rather park once, get a bunch of stuff, and that's kind of what you're envisioning out of this anyway. So I would just that's my only takeaway.
Okay. I want to endorse Laura Temple's recommendation at the last meeting and again tonight for an ad hoc committee on affordable housing. Yes, I know I'm a broken record on this, and I'm going to keep going. There is already some information out there. As Leslie mentioned, the Metropolitan Group is one, and the other one is the 2022 DuPage County Community Needs Assessment, which addresses some issues that are very near and dear to what we've been talking about. So the proportions of mortgage holders and renters spending greater than 30% of their gross income on housing appears to be increasing. Investing in the development of additional affordable rental housing options may provide great financial relief without necessarily increasing reliance on publicly sponsored programs. Additionally, seniors in DuPage County face heavy housing burdens. 56% of seniors in DuPage County fall into the category that gross rent exceeds 30% of household income. DuPage County benefits from relatively smaller proportions of impoverished individuals, but this may also reflect a pricing out phenomenon as housing prices and incomes in DuPage County tend to exceed those of surrounding areas. So that's my first item, is to endorse the idea now of having an ad hoc committee to address affordable housing because it relates to every aspect of the diversity of our community. Specifically addressing this focus area, I'm pleased to see the density bonus for inclusive housing and inclusive housing listed both in Fairview 2 and Fairview 3. However, we saw with the Civic Center, we offered an option, no one took it. Now I realize this one is offering a bonus, so to be a little more incentive to do it. I would strongly encourage the council to consider making a statement about really believing affordable housing is important and having the zoning ordinance require a certain percentage of the high-rise buildings that will be built be allocated to affordable housing. Realize that some type of bonus incentive or some other kind of arrangement to help them support the income that they would have expected if it were all high rates, would need to be part of that. But I think as a community, the second richest county in this state, we have an obligation to care for those, whether they are young professionals or elderly, they want to age in place, care for them in this way. It isn't huge, but it's it would be such a major symbolic effort. Thank you.
I'm trying to verbalize what I'm thinking about because I'm reacting on several levels. One is that you, as the council, has used the word inclusivity. But yet, when you speak of an inclusive environment, you are talking about young professionals who want to start their careers here. You are talking about people who are somewhat professionals. What about housing for people who have special needs? That is something that I have not heard in terms of your definition of inclusivity. And in the past, I know the concept of not in my backyard. Okay, I'm very familiar with that. However, quite a number of years ago, I was involved in a project where we placed 20 people through HUD housing in downtown LaGrange. That is not a very, it's not a very diverse community. But LaGrange was accepting of the people we placed there. The resources that were offered to the people with special needs were through agencies that were state funded to provide services to the people with special needs. The community was accepting of them. And my question, which I have raised quite a number of times in the council and in this community, is how accepting are we of people who do not look like us? And that is a question that I'd like to ask because I did not hear that in terms of inclusivity. I heard a lot of exclusivity, that they have to meet criteria, young professionals, et cetera, et cetera. I did not hear of somebody who had special needs.
Thank you. Thank you for getting started on this. I'm excited by the idea that a sustainability person will be working through this and keeping an eye on this development too. I think that's the plan, right? Is that the person that gets hired will help with that. So I love that. I think Naperville has recently passed an ordinance that has addressed the needs of adults with disabilities who need a different kind of housing or need supported housing or something. And so, we don't always have to invent everything or create it from scratch. There might be models, certainly in DuPage, that we could use to address that. And I think an ad hoc committee doing some of the work of teasing out, it's just one thing to say, well, let's have a studio so a young person working downtown can afford, $1,800 a month rent instead of $3,500. That's completely different than saying, an elderly couple that needs a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, but can only pay, $1,800 a month. So I think there's a way to try to figure out what, if we're saying, 5% of the units or whatever it would be, what that really means and what would actually fill these needs that we think are out there. And we think maybe there's data now telling us what's out there. Anyway, I think that that's something that a committee could tackle in 4 to 6 months or something and come back with info. So also, I hate the build to the sidewalk. I think, we try not to get the canyon feel, but it feels very European to me. It doesn't feel, I get you want to give every inch of space to somebody to make money from, but it feels crowded and it feels dangerous when you're walking on the sidewalk. I don't love it. But if we can get some incentives to set it back with green space or other public, paved space, I love that. And I retract my strip club. But I agree with Danny. In principle, the idea of having the things that people want to do and buy and visit in that whole space So that they, you know, we kind of had that with downtown. It was like we tried to put a grocery store there, and Joel was just too close, right? It was just easier to go there and pay less. And as you say, yeah, you can go there now and you can get your nails done and you can pick up your chicken and whatever. So I think as you're encouraging retailers there, the more holistically you think about how people live and work and walk around, and they get their sandwich at lunch and their coffee in the morning and their nails done after work, you know, that's how you make that neighborhood, you know, a complete location. Anyway, in general, I love it, and I love this is getting attention and work on, so thank you all.
Hang on, Jan, I'll finish the row and come to them.
Hi, I'm Joy Doran, and I'm relatively new to Downers Grove. I live on Sealy Avenue. When I first moved here, sorry, I understood that the idea of affordable, accessible, and sustainable housing was not really discussed in village council meetings. So I'm totally excited to learn what I've learned today, and I applaud you all. And I like the ad hoc idea. I would like to do whatever I could. I do have a grandson who has special learning needs. Mike knows him well. He's high functioning, but he is an example of someone who would live independently and be a resource that Downers Grove would be proud to have as a community member, but would not be able to afford to live here on his own. And so I am here to represent him in about 14 years. So thank you for what you're doing now.
First of all, I want to support triangles, but trapezoids are even better. Otherwise, I'm going to conform to the resident naysayer. Chris, you have a detached garage. If you put a living unit or business back there, you're going to have very unhappy neighbors. And I'm sort of wondering what the neighbors in these areas think about those kinds of developments in their areas, and whether you've even asked them. I have a concern about, and I don't want to be, antagonistic is not the, contra is the better word, to what's been said about affordable housing. That's not my point right now. But I look at the things, I hear what you're saying, and I look at some of the photos that you say are good examples of things, and I'm not sure whether this apartment building is the guy on Rogers that's catty corner on the lot that looks terrible. And I don't care that the Longfellow houses are $1 million houses. They're too big on small lots and they look like crap. And I have a real concern that all of this that you're talking about is going to cheapen the look of the town and make it look ticky-tacky. And there are too many hardworking people here who like the ambiance of what we have now. So what your projects and your discussions, and yes, they're exciting and they're interesting, and maybe it can come all together well, but don't cheapen the town. That's we like Downers Grove because of what Downers Grove is now. And I know it used to be Dead Grove.
Downers Grave.
And that the things that have been done to date have been improvements, and I applaud this council and past councils for that, but please, don't let them be ticky-tacky looking, catty corner slapped up on lots, like the one on Rogers that I'm thinking of is, in my opinion. And just be careful with what you're doing, because you're gonna change the entire character of the town. You're gonna do it by vote of 7 people, or maybe 4 even. 4 people in this town can change the whole character of the town. So I just implore you to be careful. And that's my naysayer speech for the evening.
Thank you all for your inputs. It is important. We don't get enough of it. We're glad you're all here. Irrespective of what your particular viewpoint on a thing, whether it aligns with 1 or 4 or 7 of us, we're glad to have the additional input. That's, as you heard when we were sitting here talking, we don't all see it exactly the same either. So thank you all for coming.
Thanks.
One last time around, anybody else want to continue this tonight, or are we going to pick it up next time? I'm good. All right, as I mentioned before, we do have the intention of going to closed session this evening. So what we're going to do is make a motion to do that, and then we'll have a couple of minutes while we assemble that. Is there a motion?
Yeah, Mayor, I move to convene in a closed session pursuant to Section 2C1 of the Illinois Open Meetings Act to consider the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the village.
Second.
Rosa, would you call the roll on that?
Commissioner Kuzinc?
Aye.
Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit?
Aye.
Commissioner Davenport?
Aye.
Commissioner Tully?
Aye.
Commissioner Glover?
Aye.
Commissioner Gilmartin?
Aye.
Mayor Barnett?
Aye. That motion passed unanimously. We will round up our executive session in just a moment.